Hi, happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. Happy election day for those of you in the US. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it is election day. Go vote. If you haven't, usually the polls are open pretty late. I know here we're going after this live stream, I'm actually going to vote. I know they're usually open pretty late here in the city. I'm sure that is the case everywhere. So a friendly PSA to those of you in the US, go vote. I'm actually going to see here too. Well, I'm just quickly setting this up now. They used to have on Facebook Live, they used to have a thing that helped brighten it up because it is now daylight savings and it is getting dark here already, which I like to have nice bright light, but we're going to hang out in the semi-dark, and we might have to get a second ring light so that we're not hanging out in the dark all through winter as we're having our conversations. But I got a lot I want to talk about today. This is one of those topics that has been on my mind. We schedule topics out in advance, and this has been one of those ones where I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to talk about this. It's come up so many different ways in client calls, so I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. We're going to be talking all about why being high vibe doesn't manifest more money in business, and talk about all things manifesting and what actually does manifest more clients and cash in your business, what actually works there. Before we dive in, a couple announcements, giveaways, all those things. So we have our free masterclass next week, Podcasting That Pays Off. I'm celebrating 100 episodes on one question. For those of you who don't know, I have a podcast, and I know sometimes people are surprised, even though we've had 100 episodes. We are hosting a live stream next week. We're going to do a free masterclass. I'm going to break down my secrets, my lessons, my takeaways after having a podcast that's really a well-oiled machine. And I really want to break this down from a marketing lens and standpoint. So even if you don't have a podcast, we're really going to be talking overall marketing strategies. It will be specific to the podcast and some of those lessons there, but I'm going to talk about really leveraging your content and how to do so to really bring in the results you want, whether that's from a podcast or something like a live stream or a Facebook group. Completely free. It's kimmarketsinger.com/podcasting-pays. When you sign up, you will also get a bonus that we put together of all 100 plus questions from all of the episodes. You can use those as journaling prompts. I'm pretty excited about that bonus there. So sign up for that. Can't wait to have that. That'll be next week. We're also giving away a free coaching session to one person who signs up. I've been fully booked for years. We don't have many of those, so that's a great way to enter to win that. I'm like, what are my announcements? My other announcement is we are giving away today. If you are on the live or on the replay, we usually pick at the end of the week. All you gotta do is say hi, leave a comment, leave me a note, and you will be entered to win. We are giving away a copy of Content That Stands Out and Sells. This is my 5-part self-study content course. We're talking manifesting and energy and mindset today, but this is really the practical part of manifesting. This is content strategy, and specifically the way I teach content strategy is what has helped many of my clients to reach 6 and 7 figures. So all you gotta do is say hi, leave an emoji. If you don't want the giveaway, if you win it, you can give it to someone else. Hey, Marie, nice to have you here. So that is our giveaway for today. I think those are all the announcements I've got, so we can dive into our conversation. I have got so much I want to talk about. So first and foremost, let me just give you a little backstory on why I feel like I'm even qualified to speak about manifesting. I mean, look, I think we are always manifesting, whether you believe in manifesting or not. If we just practically look at what manifesting is, it is to make real, essentially, to make real in our 3D world. We're going to be talking a little bit more about like the energetic part of manifesting, but I think there's very much a practical art and strategy to manifesting, literally the way your brain works. There is a brain science way to manifesting, then there's kind of the woo side of manifesting. And so we're going to talk about this more from a practical standpoint, but it also translates into the woo side of things. I'm obviously someone who also believes in the woo, but I very much believe in the practical manifesting side of things. I think we are all always manifesting. I have manifested some really incredible things in my life. This business, I moved to New York City with no job, no idea what I was doing next, no career. I manifested a career in the advertising world. I then translated that and manifested this business. I manifested my coach. When I started working with her, I actually won a partnership she had. Now I pay her a lot of money and work with her a long time, but I manifested that. I manifested meeting my husband. I moved here single. I manifested getting married. I live in my dream apartment. I manifested so many wonderful things in my life. So I feel like I have some knowledge on manifesting, and I help my clients manifest. 11 clients alone last year manifested or created their first 6 figures in business. Many of just this month, I can't tell you how many clients are having their first 10K month or hitting their first 20K month, right? These are all manifestations. We could say they are practical and they are on the energetic side, but I'm sharing them with you just so you can see I have some some understanding of the world of manifesting, both practically and on the energetic side of things. And I got a lot to say about this because I think there is a lot of noise when it comes to manifesting around the importance of being high vibe and your energy and your energetics in terms of manifesting. And while I think there is some truth to that, I think this gets really confused and it can actually sabotage your ability to manifest the things you want, particularly in business. I find this is a really interesting way I see my clients unintentionally try to avoid the very things that will help them manifest money in business. So we're gonna break this all down today. We're gonna talk about why I honestly, from my perspective, from my experience, don't think that high vibe is the most efficient way to manifest. I think you can. Look, you're always manifesting. You can manifest from any energy, and I'm going to explain that to you, but I want to break down why I just really don't think it's the most efficient thing to focus on, and why I think it's actually kind of inefficient and in some ways can cause you to do the opposite of manifesting the things you want to in your business. I'm going to share some evidence of being low vibe or whatever you want to call that, and how you can still manifest in your business. And then I'm going to break down for you how I really understand manifesting, how I've seen it really work well for me to get, we make multi-six figures in this business. That alone is a manifestation, right? We're going to talk about just in business, particularly when it comes to manifesting clients, when it comes to manifesting cash, really why it has nothing to do with your vibe and what it does have to do with. And we're going to break that all down. So if you have questions, if you have reflections, throw them at me. If what I'm sharing doesn't make sense or you want me to explain something, I have like weird allergies, y'all. Always happy to break that down. Such a side tangent, but anyone else, this might just be an East Coast thing. It switched today, but we had this wild heat wave. It was like 75 degrees the last couple of days, and now it's back in the 50s. So my allergies, I was like crying on a call earlier, not happy tears. They were just allergy tears. So I've been, there's definitely been some weird weather. So if you see me crying, it might be happy tears, or it could just be that the allergies are kicking up because the weather's been wild, but I think we're back to normal now. Anyway, let us dive in. How do I want to preface this? What I want to highlight here, we're not going to talk about this too much, but I want to be mindful here that I'm not hating on anyone's teachings or any school of thought with manifesting. I think manifesting is one of those topics this is why I believe in one-on-one coaching. I was literally talking about this with my coach recently, where we were talking about something that was really specific to me. And I was saying, I'm so grateful because the very thing you're saying to me, I know it makes sense for me, but it's the exact thing that someone else would need the exact opposite of what we're talking about works for me, because it's just that specific. And so I want to be very mindful here when we're talking about high vibe as an overall concept. I want to talk overall about how I think it's essentially toxic positivity that can be in our space, how I think that can be very harmful. We're going to talk about some principles here, but I think what's just really important is with what I'm sharing and with what anyone is sharing in terms of manifesting or creating results in business, it's so specific to each individual. And so I just want to make sure we're keeping that in mind. And so this isn't saying other teachings are incorrect or that they are correct. I think there is an element, a thread of truth through everything, and we have to find what's true for all of us as individuals. What I want to highlight, I'm going to break down some specifics here, obviously, but I think what I want us to be mindful of is more, it's just we get ourselves into hot water with any concept, whether it is manifesting or whether it is how to make money in your business. When we latch on to these concepts as almost like the secret and the absolute, right? Where it's like, you have to be high vibe, right? This becomes suddenly, instead of where it probably started out, this concept probably was originally intended as something that made a lot of sense for manifesting. It gets blown out and turned into this almost like pushing, striving, really scarcity, right? This place where it's like, I don't have this yet. That's the secret I'm missing. That's the thing I'm missing. This thing we're frenetically grabbing at. And that can happen with something like being high vibe, but it can happen with something like funnels or sales. I mean, that can happen for pretty much with mindset work, right? And I think so I just want us to keep that overall in mind. High vibe is not necessarily bad, but I do think it is just being used almost as a scapegoat in this place that we're putting a lot of frenetic energy. And I want to break down I just don't even think it's honestly the most efficient way to manifest anyway. But just to keep that in mind with this conversation and any conversation like this. There's one other piece I wanted to share there that was coming up for me. It'll come back to me. I totally lost what my thought was there. I had a text message come up and apparently my brain can't multitask. Oh, I feel like it was important. Well, it'll come to me anyway. So again, I just want to shine a light more on the principles and help us to understand that. And I want to invite you to apply this to you, but we're not hating on the overall idea of manifesting. And I think there's always a thread of truth with everything. I think our space just has this funny way of latching onto things. So what I do want to talk about here though is with the concept of being high vibe, what I see through clients, what I've experienced myself is how, first of all, this frankly isn't how we operate as humans, and how striving to be high vibe in order to manifest something can often push away the very thing you're wanting to manifest in your business. So, and when it comes to manifesting in your business, I think it's a very sticky and unsafe feeling place you put yourself in when the strategy for you to manifest clients and money is based on your vibes, right? There's nothing wrong with being high vibe. I do think aiming for this will break that down a little bit, why I think it can be harmful to some degree, but like overall, like being high vibe from time to time, I'm a high vibe person, right? Like that's not bad. But when suddenly this becomes the way that you're going to create and manifest clients and cash in your business, that is a very unsafe and unsolid foundation and footing to be in, which is going to create a lot of instability in your business. Because as a human being, I love the way Brooke Castillo talks about this. She talks about how we're 50-50. I believe we can tip the scale and be more than 50-50, but she talks a lot about how we're 50-50 in terms of like life is 50-50, 50 positive, 50 negative, 50 happy, 50 sad, 50 high vibe, 50 low vibe, right? I think, again, we can tip that scale, but I think it is asking you to be not human, to strive for being high vibe. And if you are striving to be high vibe, and that is the mechanism and the only mechanism by which you create results, that is a very, very, very unstable way to create anything in your business. If I have to rely on Kim Argetsinger being high vibe all the time to create results in my business, right? That's a lot of pressure on me. And I'm essentially asking myself to be unhuman, unhuman, whatever the phrase is there. I'm essentially asking myself to bypass emotions, but I'm also putting pressure on an emotion and an energy state that isn't actually a very stable energy state. And it isn't an energy state that creates any kind of stability in my nervous system long term. If we think about what high vibe is, right? If we think about the state of excitement or extreme happiness, that is a beautiful emotion. I love being in that emotion. And it is actually not very stable in my nervous system to operate at that level 24/7. Right? I literally wouldn't be able to sleep. It's sort of like someone who, if anyone's ever done cocaine, right? Even I'm not recommending cocaine, but cocaine will give someone a false sense of being high vibe. And for anyone who's seen someone on cocaine before, we can probably all agree they might be high vibe and in a high energetic state, but that is not actually a very stable state in their nervous system, nor is that a natural state. And so I think it's a little backwards when we're saying the way you're going to manifest clients and money is to operate at, to strive for, to push for, to go for a state that is, when we sustain it for a long time, actually not regulated in your nervous system. Let me know if this is tracking at all here. And again, if you're watching now or on the replay, and a lot of you watching the replay, I want to know if you have questions here. But what I have, if I just think about, we'll use an example outside of business. If I think about manifesting a relationship, right? And I think, okay, the way I'm going to manifest a relationship is I've got to be super high vibe, because like attracts like, and if I'm not high vibe, I won't attract a mate, right? Think of how that asks me to put a lot of pressure on my energetic state, and it asks me to be in an energetic state that, again, is not my natural grounded state. And then it asks me to be something I'm probably not, and to bypass, we've talked so much, I did talk about this on the podcast, right, about being the cool girl or the cool person in business. It really asks me to be in this false state, thinking that's how I'm going to create something, which does a lot of things that are really not all that supportive for manifesting a partner, right? It means I either have to stay in this state all the time, which means I'm not allowed to have a bad day. I'm not allowed to be unhappy. I'm not allowed to not be cool or not be positive or not be high vibe in order to manifest, to create this relationship, right? But it's also asking me to continue to push for something, which is really a form of scarcity, right? Or instability that is not how we as humans are in our regular day, right? I'm a very content, I would say I'm a very happy, very positive, very content human. And I am a human being with emotions, right? With vibes that are more than simply being high vibe. And what I've seen through clients is when they're thinking high vibe is how they create results, it feels so unstable, first of all, because that's not a natural state all the time. And it feels so scary for them, right? There's so much fear that comes up for when they have a bad day, when they're in fear, which is a normal human reaction and response, right? When they're processing human emotions, when anything isn't high vibe, there is then a fear that comes up that the bottom's going to fall out, because it's a very rocky foundation for creating and manifesting results in your business or anywhere in your life. If I am manifesting a relationship, if I'm manifesting my marriage based on high vibe, think of how unstable that marriage would feel, because it would mean anytime I'm not high vibe, right, that relationship isn't on solid footing. For anyone who's been in a long-term relationship or in a marriage, of course, we bring our best selves. We're working on ourselves. Again, I'm a generally happy, pretty content person. That is very different than high vibe. But if high vibe is the mechanism that creates the safety and the connection and that allows for that marriage, that means I have to maintain this state that is not actually in equilibrium, that is not actually human. Is this tracking for everyone? So I find this creates a lot of pushing energy. And if we think about, celebration, think about running your business from the state of celebration and excitement all the time. I think about how wildly inappropriate and inefficient that would be for most of the things you do in business. I coach clients all day long, right? I'm on calls all day long, and then I'm here and talking to team. I am a content human being, right? I have a pretty grounded, I think, energetic state. But imagine if I was high vibe and in that high vibe state all the time on client calls and here on this live stream. How absolutely not only inefficient, but wildly inappropriate of an energetic state that would be for if I'm holding space for a client who's going through something really challenging, right? It would literally be the opposite of what would be appropriate in that time. And so I wanted to start to think about these things, because again, otherwise I see this through clients, there just starts to be this pressure. It's just a new way to put pressure on in your business. And instead of pressure on, I don't know, your sales process or booking clients, right now the pressure becomes, I've got to be high vibe, I've got to be in the right, perfect, energetic state. It's another form of fucking perfectionism, quite frankly. And I find it asks you to be something that isn't even actually going to support you in creating results in your business. It is not even the state that I find most supportive. What I find most supportive for manifesting results in business isn't high vibe and isn't low vibe. If we think about high vibe and low vibe, they're both extremes, right? They're both kind of not very regulated states in your system. Again, we use the cocaine example, horrible example, I know, but I think it's just a great, in terms of the energetic, how dysregulated that is. If you were on cocaine 24/7, if you are super high vibe 24/7, right? How are you gonna sleep? How are you gonna do some of the tasks that really ask you to be a little bit more grounded? High vibe is really appropriate for certain situations, but what I find again with when we're chasing high vibe, it is a chasing, pushing energy, and the pendulum is swinging, right? We're high vibe, and if we're not high vibe, we're low vibe. And if you're someone who does believe in, I think about this almost from a self-regulated state, right? Neither energetic state is super regulated. What I think is much more beneficial for manifesting practically and energetically is being self-regulated, knowing how to regulate your nervous system, having appropriate responses to what's going on, and knowing how to get to neutral and operate from there. And that can be very content, can be very positive, right? But there's a very big difference between regulation versus these extreme highs. I find when you're self-regulated and when you can operate from a neutral state, And neutral, again, can still be positive. This is where you make really smart strategic decisions. This is where you're not avoiding things in your business because, man, the high vibe thing and the manifesting thing just becomes, I find mindset and personal development work, which mindset work is like 90% of the coaching I do, right? This is 90% of what I talk with clients about, but there's a sneaky way when we're chasing high vibe, when we're chasing manifesting, where this can be a way to bypass not just your emotions, but to bypass the very normal strategic action steps that are required to run a fucking business. And excuse my French, but I think our space has gotten so wildly insane with the pendulum swinging, where this teaching of energetics does so at the expense that it bypasses the other side of the equation. If we actually look at manifesting principles aren't honestly even about your energetics. It's about deciding on what you want, getting into belief that it's yours even when you can't see it, and then finding the practical ways you can meet the universe halfway. In business, that would be strategy and action to do your part because you know it gets to be yours, and then you allow for the magic of the universe to meet you halfway, right? That's kind of like manifesting 101 boiled down. Deciding something gets to be yours and believing something is yours, and then showing up to meet the universe halfway. Nowhere in there do you have to be high vibe. I'm a little all over the place here because I have so much I want to say, and I want to read these comments. I've used this example a lot, but my father was really sick just before COVID hit, and I lost my father during that time. It would have been very inappropriate for me to be high vibe during that time, right? I was not high vibe. I was self-regulated. I was processing my emotions. I was very neutral with running my business. I manifested wonderful things in my business, wonderful things. It was a very interesting time of dichotomy where it was both a very challenging time for me. I was processing a lot of grief, and it was also a really beautiful time for me, just in terms of getting to spend time with my father, and also just seeing how it was such evidence to me as well, and that I want to reflect to you, where I did not need to be high vibe to manifest very positive things. I did need to know how to self-regulate. I did need to know how to not push. Think of if I had tried to push for high vibe during that time. First, it literally would have bypassed emotion and been inappropriate. But that would have also put such a weird pressure on things. I mean, we can just see how that would have actually not had me manifest the things I want in my business. Whereas my business was really thriving during that time. It was actually a really beautiful gift for me to have during that time, and supported me to go home and be with my dad and all of these things. So not to make this conversation all about that, but I really do want to give evidence here for you can have very non-high vibe things happening in your life. You can not feel high vibe, right? I processed a lot of emotion during that time. That was not what was required for me to manifest in my business. What was required of me was to decide what was true for me in my business and what I wanted, to believe that was possible for me, right? And to be really clear for the ways I was going to show up to meet the universe halfway. Let me see here. Julia says, "Hi Kim, this is the kind of this is kind of eye-opening for me. I always thought high vibe was the way to be. Seeing now how neutrality is actually better. And deep thought now, LOL. Oh, I'm so glad this is resonating. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, again, I'm not hating on high. There's nothing wrong with being high vibe, but I think just seeing that high vibe all the time is actually not a normal human state. And I think that is where this creates a lot of challenges, because we think that's the way to be, right, all the time. So we're either striving for this thing that's kind of impossible, or that we put a lot of pressure on, and therein lies a lot of scarcity and challenge, or we're being high vibe all the time. That usually means that we're bypassing the very things we probably need to process, or operating from a state that maybe isn't even the most efficient. Again, I do think high vibe, and you can be content most of the time, right? I'm content in my life most of the time. I'm very positive. And there are things that come across my plate that don't, this is like the silliest example, but it's worth sharing. I'm working on something for y'all for next month. And so I worked a little bit on the weekend to get that done. Did it make me super high vibe that I was working on my weekend? Was I super high vibe doing that? No, probably no, not really. I was neutral though. It wasn't making me low vibe. But if I had put pressure on myself to be super high vibe to get that done on the weekend, honestly, I probably wouldn't have done it, or I would have been really weird and frenetic in it, or made myself wrong, or thought that I was sabotaging things. Instead of, I was just really neutral. It was just something I needed to do for my business. I want to read your question in one second. Just to finish this thought, what I find and what I support my clients with, as opposed to this swing, Because this is the piece I wanted to say, the universe is all about balance, y'all. Like, this is why we have contractions, expansions. We talk about that so much in business, right? Before most expansions, there's a contraction, right? The universe is a big equalizer. So if you have a contraction, it's going to give you an expansion. If we're super high vibe to that extreme, almost like cocaine level, right? What's the universe going to do for balance, right? Extreme high vibe, you're going to kind of manifest the equalizer. What I like to play with is integration instead. How can we integrate neutrality and integrate the things you want as the new normal, right? I like to integrate. I just get to have this level of success. This is the kind of money I make. These are the kinds of things that are possible for me. Like, this is just normal, high vibe or not. Like, I'm integrating that as normal and as neutral. Then there's nothing for the universe to equalize. Then I am just creating a being in a state that I am an energetic match for, that I am just saying, this is just what's real for me. Low vibe or high vibe kind of doesn't effing matter, right? Then if I'm having a shit day because I'm human, and again, I'm a pretty happy person, but I think one of the reasons I'm a pretty happy person is I'm not putting the pressure on myself to be high vibe. Give myself full permission to have a shit day if I do it, which means I have less of them. Ever notice how that happens? The more pressure you put on something, the harder it is to have happen. But then I know, just because I'm having a shit day, that doesn't mean I'm not going to manifest clients in my business, because I also have decided and believe and trust in my strategy, and that I'm able to neutrally show up for it, and that is my way to meet the universe halfway, and that just brings results in for me. I've integrated that as just normal and true. Okay. Julia says, do you find that your mindset work is what helps you self-regulate, or do you have different things you do? Do I find my mindset work is what helps me self-regulate, or do you? Yes, and so I definitely find my mindset work helps me self-regulate, and I have been coached around this for a long time, one-on-one. I also, I've shared this a lot, but I have quite a bit of trauma with capital T and lowercase t that I've worked through. So I do EMDR therapy, which I found has really helped regulate my nervous system with some of the more trauma responses. But I think that's actually a helpful thing to share here. I've been doing EMDR for probably a year and a half. I have tools to self-regulate, but there were some things I obviously needed to process there. It's not like I wasn't manifesting clients and money in my business 3 years ago. It's not like 6 years ago when I started my business, I wasn't, because there were traumatic experiences that would sometimes have me not be high vibe, right? And so I share that with everyone here, because I think, again, this, especially for those, most humans have trauma of some kind. A lot of humans have trauma that has them not be self-regulated, right? And I think then we just start to create this story and this belief, and this is where it will harm your ability to manifest, which is, if I'm not perfectly self-regulated, if I'm not perfectly high vibe, if I'm not perfectly fill in the blank, I don't get to have the things I want, or that's the thing I'm missing, or that's the thing that's keeping me from what I want. And I would just say we're always working on these things, and there is no the universe doesn't give a fuck if you're perfect or not, or high vibe or not. It's just giving you what you believe you get to have, and what you're allowing in and meeting it halfway for all the time. Otherwise, we could see a lot of examples of people who are frankly not high vibe, who manifest a lot of great things in their life, right? So I think this is a place where it's like, it just becomes just a new way for us to make ourselves wrong, to shit on ourselves, to put pressure on ourselves, to get into perfectionism, or to honestly create avoidance. I have a lot of clients where we all have different patterns, right? Some clients are like, they overwork. I have other clients who have a lot of avoidance patterns. And then this just becomes a new way to avoid doing the things in your business, because you aren't high vibe enough, right? So why bother doing the things in your business? Because you gotta do your mindset work a little bit more. You gotta self-regulate a little bit more. You got to work on being high vibe a little bit more. And I'm all for all of self-regulation and mindset work, but we can see how this can suddenly become a scapegoat and the very reason not to show up for the things in your business that actually make you money, right? That's part of the equation. But anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question. Yes, I find mindset work absolutely helps me self-regulate. I find coaching, EMDR therapy helps me a lot. I find being really kind to myself. And then I have a lot of, aside from mindset work, more, I guess, embodiment practices. I have practices I like to practice in the moment if I need to self-regulate. So it's not just like journaling mindset work, but if I need to pattern interrupt, or if I need to create safety, it's almost like a whole other live stream conversation. But if you're in a fear response, I'm really big on closing that stress cycle in my body. So I exercise for that reason, but if I need to, like, I have clients who will like write their anger on a page or like punch a pillow, but something to really close out the stress cycle and then to be like soothing to your nervous system. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think it's important here in seeing the self-regulation and really the integration and the normalization of the decisions and the beliefs of what you're wanting to create in your business. I find that to be so much more stable than chasing high vibe, which I find again puts a lot of pressure. If we're just looking for integration and seeing like, oh, this is just normal for me, this is just what I'm deciding to get to have, and whichever way I am, I'm able to show up that way. If I'm showing up not perfectly high vibe or having a bad day, I can still create results, takes a lot of the pressure off, and I find that is actually the easier way to manifest. Julie says it was really helpful. Good. I'm glad that resonated. And again, I also find this creates a lot more safety for everyone in their business because we're not building the manifestation on a house or your business on a house of cards. If we're trying to manifest only on high vibe, you're building your business on a house of cards. Like that's just, I don't know how else to say it. Whereas if we're seeing, I'm building my business on a really solid, simple strategy and a simple action plan, and then the mindset energetics are, I get to decide, I get to have what I want, and I believe this strategy and action works for me, right? And I just believe this is normal and I integrate this as normal. That is a very solid and safe foundation that doesn't ask you to have to feel a certain way. Of course, is your experience ever going to be a lot easier if you're feeling great? Yes. Is it going to be easier to show up if you're feeling great? Yes. Is the goal for you to feel great and to tip the scale to the positive more often than not? Abso-freaking-lutely. If you're in a positive mindset, does that help you, like we've talked a lot about gratitude, like does that help you show up differently? Abso-freaking-lutely. Like we're not discounting any of those truths, but I think that's very different than thinking I have to be high vibe as the way to manifest versus no, like whatever vibe I can manifest. And that could be the very thing that can allow you to be neutral and then shift into high vibe. So hopefully that makes sense there. Right. I went off on a massive tangent there. So let me find my notes because I feel like there were a couple things here that that I wanted to make sure to really include here. Oh, I did talk about a lot of the things I wanted to. That's fun. So the other piece here, talking about business specifically, and again, I'm not hating on high vibe. Or positivity. I think we just want to be so mindful of where this becomes a scapegoat or a way to avoid or a way to bypass emotionally and in your business. And so I think we can do this, right? High vibe can become toxic positivity. But again, I think it can also just be that way we avoid or we bypass. And so if you're feeling high vibe, I also don't want this to be like, oh, now if you're anything but neutral, that's not like, that we're just subbing high vibe for neutrality. What I just want you to play with is you get to be a human and have the full range of emotions, and playing with this idea that, yeah, of course, things are easier when they feel good, but you can still manifest when you don't. And really, when it comes to business, what allows you to manifest clients and cash are a couple key things. And I've said this earlier, but I think it's helpful just to spell out. It really is that decision. You just get to decide what you want, and it's the belief, right? I can not be having a high vibe day, right? I use when my dad was sick for an example, right? It would have been wildly inappropriate for me to be high vibe. I get to process those emotions and feel and be in grief, and I can still believe that my work is excellent. I can still believe that my marketing works. I can still decide and believe I have capacity for a client and that I'm capable of holding that space. And that when I show up and market and sell, right, that works for me and I get to make money and that my business makes consistent 5 or multi-5 figure. I think at that time it's probably making 5-figure months, right? Like that decision and belief, the vibe under it is kind of a bonus, but it is not a requirement. Hopefully that's tracking there, right? That's really the part we're looking for. So I talk with clients a lot about how if they have really big emotions to process, we don't want to bypass the emotions. Process your emotions. It's what we make those emotions mean that get us into hot water. When you have big emotions and you process them and you make that mean, I'm shitty, I'm wrong, I'm bad, I'm not good enough, things aren't working, I'm not high vibe, whatever that is. All of that noise, that is thought work. That is not emotional processing work, right? process your emotions. And then the work is looking at, what are you making those emotions mean? What are you deciding is true? What is your belief set? That is the mindset work. That is when you hear manifesting, when you hear Mike Dooley say thoughts create things, those are the thoughts that create things. So if you're deciding, I mean, this is where high vibe has a thread of truth. High vibe works if you decide high vibe is what manifests things. I mean, to some degree, your thought will create that thing. I'm just offering here, you can decide being a human allows you to manifest things. Both are true, whatever you decide is true. But it's the thought, it's the meaning towards that. That's really the manifesting, what do I want to call it? Like lighter fluid there. And then with that, it's, how are you then getting in business, getting clear on the practical strategy and the action steps that allow you to show up as if what you are deciding and believing are true, so that you're being that, right? You're neutrally really embodying, you're integrating that this is my truth. I'm showing up for this because of course I know this is true, right? So if I use that example, I could be low vibe and grieving, but if I decide I am a successful business owner who has a fully booked practice, who makes a certain amount of money, and that is who I am, this is how I show up, I have space to run clients, I can show up that way for my strategy, right? I can do that in any vibe, but that is me showing, that is how we manifest in business, right? And that means I'm going to have a clear strategy, and I'm going to have a clear action that I'm actively showing up for. And that's why I meet the universe halfway. And the magic comes in when we do that. Anyone who knows Mike Dooley's work, and then I want to read these comments here. Anyone who knows Mike Dooley's work, he has that triangle exercise where he has you write the goal at the top, you draw a line down the middle, you're on the left-hand side, the universe, God, energy, whatever you believe in. Everyone believes in different things. It could be surrendering to any kind of higher, it could be your higher self, right? On the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side, you write everything that you can do to reach that goal. And then on the right-hand side, it's everything you have to surrender. As a business owner, your left-hand side, it is that decision, it is that belief, it is that strategy, it is that action. That's how you meet the universe halfway. And then the magic part is then trusting that works and allowing for those magic opportunities come in. Nowhere in that is be an unhuman person who's high vibe all the time. Okay, I want to read these comments. Marie says, it's not always easy to stay connected with our inner self, where our wisdom comes from, where we can dip into tremendous power and also serenity, wisdom, and clarity. It's not, oh, this came in twice. Absolutely. I think this is the work, and I think just to normalize what you're saying, I think that's so true. It's both not easy, and it's also the easiest thing in the world, is kind of the way I think about it. I think it's the human condition to have all the different kinds of resistance come up that keep us separated from our inner self, that keep us separated from that wisdom, and that resistance, that fear, that ego self, the noise online, pushing, getting into scarcity, right? Not trusting ourselves, like all of these different things that keeps us from tapping into our inner power. And so I think that is literally the human experience. I wouldn't have a job if that weren't the case. That's what I'm supporting clients with all the time. And I would say it's also almost the easiest thing, and that what we can see becomes so simple is our jobs as business owners, our jobs in terms of manifesting isn't so complicated that it's like, how do I try so hard to be high vibe all the time, right? We can see how that's almost a grippy, pushy thing, where it's like, how can I actually surrender and let it be easier and easier to tap into my own inner wisdom, to hear my own self, serenity, inspiration, clarity, what you're talking about here, that more grounded neutrality. And from that, we can absolutely have all sorts of high vibe, bliss, emotions, feelings that can manifest more of the same, but we can also surrender and let go for the other emotions. But it's almost like what makes it not easy is what also makes it easy, because it's so much, I think, about surrendering the resistance and the fear and tapping into trust of ourselves. And again, it's sort of like, that's both easy and not easy. It's the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's because of our human condition, our human experience, it also becomes the hardest thing to do. So hopefully that part made sense there. But yes, I love that comment so much. Okay, I feel like there's, we talked about how this becomes, yes. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit, but I think just seeing, so with this, like, that's actually how you manifest clients in business, right? I think we talk so much about how it's not simply strategy and action. And I think that's where, right, if it were just strategy and action, everybody who has strategy and everybody who takes action, like, you could just work harder and harder and harder and get results. It's the mindset behind the action, it's the energy behind the action, but that doesn't mean you have to be perfectly positive all the time. And just like it's not only strategy and action, it's also not only energy and mindset, right? We really need that balance. If you're manifesting anyway, if we look at what manifesting actually is, and we look, I think the triangle exercise is the perfect way to think about, I don't like the word perfect, but it's a great way to think about manifesting, because it really does show you it's not surrender everything to the universe. There are things on your half of that triangle, the ways you show up to meet the universe, the higher power, your higher self, whatever that may be, as well as those things that we kind of surrender to. But I think seeing there, it's not all one or the other. It really is both. And I think what happens when, and I'm going to keep saying there's nothing wrong with high vibe, but when we put so much pressure on only high vibe, and that is the thing, we can see how we then almost miss out on the very practical part of our half of the triangle that's frankly just the way business is run. And I don't think anyone in this group really falls into this, but it's worth speaking to, because I think our space can just get so crazy sometimes, where it's like we just so badly want manifesting and being high vibe. It just feels so good. It's just such a great way, not just to bypass emotion, but to literally avoid the uncomfortable things in business. And I lovingly call clients out on this all the time, because as humans, right, we want to avoid pain to seek pleasure, right? We want to conserve calories in terms of don't want to do anything that takes us outside of our comfort zone. Like, these are all parts of the way the brain is wired. We have to actively work to rewire these things. Otherwise, we would also be living in caves, and I would be in an even darker room than I am right now, because we wouldn't have light or anything like that. And so something like manifesting in high vibe, it just becomes this really convenient way to avoid the very, very practical things that allow you to generate results in your business that aren't comfortable, right? It's very easy to say, well, this doesn't feel high vibe or enjoyable for me to show up and sell today, so I'm going to work on being high vibe, because that's the thing that manifests clients in my business. Or it doesn't feel really high vibe for me to go and create content for the next week. Like, I'm not feeling high vibe right now, so I'm going to wait until I do to create that content. Where it's like, yeah, no, that's called avoidance. That's called an excuse. That's called bypassing. It is not a prerequisite for you to be high vibe. It's a prerequisite for you to decide you're a business owner, and to believe you are, and to trust your strategy, and to show up for it, right? Like, that decision belief set is there. And being uncomfortable is often, or doing things that don't feel great in the moment but do later, are often the very ways you manifest results. I was talking with a mastermind friend about this actually yesterday, and we were using the gym as an example, right? I think it's so easy for us to say, I want to manifest a really fit and strong body, but I'm not feeling high vibe right now. It doesn't feel very high vibe for me to sweat. So I'm going to wait until I feel high vibe, and that's going to manifest my healthy, strong body. And it's like, well, but actually you cannot be high vibe. You can, like, going through the very unhigh vibe thing you don't want to do of exercising might be the very thing that makes you feel high vibe, endorphins and all of that. And being high vibe isn't a prerequisite, right? Like, that is actually the very thing that's having you're using that as an excuse to not show up for the thing that's actually meeting the universe halfway to get what you want. Hopefully that is making sense there. But I want to bring that here, because as business owners, I think we have to be very mindful of where we're using things that are actually, this is why I said in the email for this, I think there's a thread of truth to high vibe. Being positive, feeling good, tapping into feel good emotions absolutely helps you manifest. It absolutely helps you show up. It absolutely makes everything easier, right? If I'm constantly showing up on lives and I'm just depressed and miserable, that's not going to be the best energy to sell from. But that is very different than the way we use high vibe, right? I think a lot of times we're using this as an excuse, and we use mindset work, and I love mindset work, y'all, but we use this as an excuse to not show up for the things we need to do to move us forward. And we forget that so often things like feeling high vibe, feeling joy, feeling flow, feeling good is the byproduct of doing something challenging and hard. There's a great book called Flow by Milhei. Gosh, I can never say his last name. It's like, someone needs to look this up and put this in the notes. It's excellent. It's like an old school psychology book. It's a little dense, but he talks about the state of flow. The reason I'm bringing this up here is what he talks a lot about is how we think happiness is sort of like we're supposed to be happy and I'm just supposed to like conjure happiness. And what the truth is most of us find our happiness, most of us find our high vibe as the result, as the gift, as the byproduct of, it's the feeling we derive after or during doing something challenging, right? So I get my high vibe feeling, I feel really good after I go to a spin class or during a spin class, right? But what most of us are trying to do is think, I need to be high vibe to go to that spin class, right? Or I need to feel high vibe ahead of time, right? To be able to do the thing. So in business, we think, I need to feel high vibe to show up, to do a live stream, to show up, to sell, to like be able to manifest things, or I'm doing things wrong, or like, I just need to like go work on being high, like go need to work my manifesting more. And really it's show up and sell, show up and do the uncomfortable thing, show up to the spin class, show up to the thing that feels challenging, and see how that high vibe, that feel good, that really gets to be, it's like the gift and byproduct after doing something uncomfortable or challenging or hard. And so I think neutrality is really the gift for us as business owners, and where we make the best decisions in terms of like just being mindful of like having that pendulum swing. If you're feeling high vibe, this is not about like, how do I bring myself down? But I think just noticing where you're trying to push yourself to high vibe. And honestly, in business, I'm generally wanting to make strategic business decisions from a more neutral place. Because if I'm on either extreme, I'm probably not thinking clearly and strategically either way. But if I want to feel high vibe, we're not hating on that. Again, feeling good is a beautiful thing, as long as we're not making low vibe wrong, or you're not letting yourself process, or you're thinking you can't create results from that. I really want us to play with this idea of, what if that gets to be the gift and the benefit of doing something challenging, right? Of doing something, going to having the sweaty workout, you feel high vibe afterwards, probably not before. And then at a certain point, your brain starts to link, workout makes me feel good. So you might start feeling that in advance, but not waiting for that to be the prerequisite to do the very things that create the feeling you're wanting, and not using that as an excuse or as a reason for why you don't get to have the things you want. It is not a requirement. It just makes everything feel better. Marie says, flow, living the peak of your abilities. Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much for looking that up. Mel Hay, I can never pronounce his name. It's a brilliant book. It's a short read, but a dense read. Thank you for putting that in the notes. I appreciate you so much. So flow is the state, when I'm in a coaching call, I'm in flow, right? Where you kind of lose sense of time. You're just like in the zone. So that kind of flow is what this book is about. And so living at the peak of your abilities, but that is just one of the concepts. And I think it's just helpful in a world where, because we're so in a space that is talking about manifesting and energetics, and I'm all for the energetics. But again, I just see how often these concepts that are grounded or in a truth get ungrounded in terms of what actually works for you to manifest and what doesn't work for you to manifest. So what I would invite everyone to play with is, if you feel high vibe, embrace it. But with everything in business, with everything manifesting, whether you're manifesting clients in cash or you're manifesting your dream home, right? The thing we want to surrender and let go of is that chasing energy, that pushing energy, that frenetic energy. That is all a representation of scarcity, of fear, of I don't actually believe I get to have it, of not having it integrated and normalized. And so just noticing across the board, where are you finding yourself in this like, I need to strive energy, and seeing how that can happen with the high vibe energy. If you are actually feeling high vibe, embrace it, enjoy it. But don't make yourself wrong if you don't live at high vibe all the time and you come back down to neutral. Instead, I want to invite you to see that is simply normal in the human experience. It's not actually sustainable, right? If I keep using my relationship as an example, but I'm just thinking about, I was like with my husband all the time, just like chirping all the time. Like that would actually like be so weird, especially if he was telling me something really serious. Anyway, so just seeing like how both are okay, but when you're in a different state, just seeing that is also normal. You get to have those range in emotions. Where we spin ourselves out is when we get into that place of like, I'm trying to chase the emotion because I think that's the secret. I think that's the thing I'm missing. As soon as that is your mindset, you can see how suddenly you are not trusting, you are not integrated, you are not someone who is decided and believing, you are someone who is in a gap, you are someone who thinks you are missing something, you are someone who is in scarcity. And in that way, it is the very opposite of what helps you manifest. And then I think the other thing we just want to play with is just knowing there's nothing wrong with extreme emotions. Like, yes, it isn't always super regulated, but like if I'm super, super happy, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I'll use my wedding day as an example. It was such a heightened day, but if I'm always in this heightened state, we do tend to have contraction, expansion. The universe does tend to want to balance things out. So if we're always chasing and living in this really extreme high, then of course it's going to be normal for us to have a big swing. And so I offer that in terms of business, how we can see that might not actually be the most efficient way to create results in business, or again, the most stable or safe way. That's going to create a lot of safety in your nervous system to be able to show up as a CEO, where you can reliably integrate and normalize and neutrally know you're always creating those results. And so I offer, as just kind of a closing thought here, to play with this idea of what if what really allows me to generate and manifest clients and cash on repeat is really looking at how can I create more stability in my nervous system, really integrate my decisions and my beliefs and my strategy and my action, and really look to see how when I'm in this more neutral, integrated place and a more normalized place, right, I can have all the different emotions, but that's going to feel a lot more stable. And when I feel a lot more stable, it's a lot easier for me to keep showing up and to keep meeting the universe halfway. And then of course we get to have those magic things show up for us as well. I'm just seeing if I have any other notes for you. I feel like I could talk about this so much. I have a couple other notes, but I think we've been talking this for an hour. I think y'all get what I'm saying. So I hope that is helpful as a recap. There's nothing wrong with being high vibe, but it is absolutely not a prerequisite for manifesting. And in some ways, I think this can be more harmful than positive or beneficial in business. I really want you to play with what's true for you from this. How might practicing integrating your decisions, integrating your beliefs, really grounding into them? I like to think of neutrality and the energetics that allow you to manifest more as a grounded, receptive, like lean back, open, like if I think about my marriage, right? Like I'm just grounded in that. I know we're good. We've made this commitment, right? I just get to be, because I have decided and I believe and I'm showing up for that relationship, right? Like I'm just being in a different state that is a lot more grounded and open and receptive. And neutral is just an easy way to say it, but I think neutral sometimes spins people out to think it's like emotionless. It's not emotionless. I'm super happy and content. It's just not needing to swing. I'm just not trying to grasp or prove. And I think I just like to use examples outside. I'm doing this because my husband's in the other room, but I just like to use examples outside of business, because I think we can then take those examples we have outside of business and see what actually works for me outside of business, or maybe what isn't working for me outside of business. How can we bring that then into our business? And so the same idea, how can you play with that energy in your business and play with more grounded energy and more grounded decisions and beliefs that you're matching then with the strategy and action, and then playing again with, and some of those high vibes get to come after doing the challenging thing. All right, I hope that is helpful for you. If you have any questions, reflections on the replay, throw them at me. I always love to answer those for you. If you want me to dive into anything else on another live stream, I'm happy to do that as well. A reminder, if you want to join me for Podcasting That Pays Off, Secrets, Lessons, and Takeaways after 100 podcast episodes, that is next Tuesday. It is KimArketSinger.com/podcasting-pays. If you sign up, you will also get our bonus playbook with 101 question, the journaling questions for you that you can use both on the mindset and the strategy and action side for you in business, as well as the clarity side of things to help you reach those 6 and 7 figures. And if you're hearing this and you're like, Kim, okay, this is very refreshing. This feels actually really calming on my nervous system. I know that I could use some support with, yes, practically manifesting in terms of looking at that practical strategy that works for me, the practical action steps I'm going to show up for and stop making excuses for, as well as the mindset and the energetics there in a way that does feel a lot more grounded and stabilizing, and really looking at regulating my nervous system instead of almost like trying to game the system. this feels really aligned for me. That's something I could use support with, because I know I am ready to hit those 6 figures in my business, to hit those multi-6 figures, to take my business all the way. That is exactly what I support my clients with. And I love, love, love getting to support them with both, again, the mindset, energetics, and absolutely the practical side of that with the strategy in action. It would be an honor to support you. I will drop a discovery call link. I don't know if we have, I think we have room for one intensive we're opening up this month. If not, I know we definitely are opening up at least one intensive in December. So book a discovery call. We can chat. We'll get you into the next opening, whenever that might be. I have to look. I don't actually know when it is, but we'll get you in whenever that is. And then I will be back next week. We'll have our masterclass, and I can't wait to dive in and talk with y'all then about all the podcasting fun and to celebrate our 100th episode. Love y'all. Bye.